July has not been a disappointment because cinema is back.
7, 6, 5, 4.
Well, it did take me a while to end up going to see Oppenheimer. It was all I could do to get home so I could record this. Oh my gosh, Christopher Nolan. Before I dive into anything, let me first say that I will not spoil anything, or I will try not to. I think there's one thing I'll say in this that is maybe a slight spoiler, but not serious. As per usual, we're going to go through pros and cons, and then by the end, I'll tell you what I think about it personally and movie critically, and let you know if it's worth seeing. But judging by my introduction to this video, I think you could well understand that I'm in love with it. Let's start with the pros. It's directed by Christopher Nolan. It's a pro in itself. Christopher Nolan hasn't made a bad movie, unless you count his first film, Following, which was just not that good, but that's because it's his first film ever. Everything since has been phenomenal, important, fantastic, and Oppenheimer is obviously right up there with the best of them. I'm not going to dive into all the film stuff because even I, after watching 25 YouTube videos on it, really don't care. And I hate to say that, between the 65 millimeter and the 70 millimeter and the IMAX cameras, obviously people are going to go see it where it's convenient for them. Maybe there are better viewing experiences elsewhere. I'm not driving across the state to see it in IMAX 70 millimeter. But let me get off that horse and let's jump on something that's important, and that is Killian Murphy. I could talk about all the other actors and actresses, and they all did a phenomenal job. They truly did. Everyone from Emily Blunt to Robert Downey Jr., Matt Damon, just at the top of the list. Everyone did great. But let's talk about Killian Murphy, the star of the movie, the person playing Oppenheimer. And I've mentioned it before in his movie, I'm always getting confused, 28 Days Later. It was almost like, he was thrust into the spotlight with that movie. It's a truly phenomenal and well-respected movie. And he's done other works, and he's been in great stuff. But this is his magnum opus. There will never be another Killian Murphy performance that will ever begin to compare to what he has done in Oppenheimer. The true embodiment of Robert Oppenheimer, in my opinion. I didn't read American Prometheus, for which the movie is based on, but I can just imagine that Killian Murphy read every word of it and pored over it and learned from it. It's unbelievable how well he was able to act as Oppenheimer. In fact, at some points, I almost forgot this is like a movie. That's how fantastic he portrayed Oppenheimer. It's not a Christopher Nolan film if we don't talk about the soundtrack. I'm not going to pretend to pronounce the guy's name right. It's like Ludwig Göransson, Swedish, Norwayish, I don't know, European. Okay. The soundtrack, as per most of the best movies ever made, is imperative to the film. When I talk about Christopher Nolan films, usually you want to concentrate on how important the soundtrack is to him. Interstellar is one of the best movies of all time. I don't think that's up for debate. Maybe you think it is. It's not. But the soundtrack is vitally important to Interstellar. The soundtrack's vitally important to Dunkirk. The soundtrack is vitally important to Oppenheimer. It's gorgeous. The movie continuously builds tension over 3 hours, and it's important that it does. It's giving you the gravity of these situations that not just Oppenheimer's going through, but humanity. It's a gorgeous work, and it's a soundtrack that I think you could put over anything. It's just that amazing. Shout out to Ludwig G. The soundtrack doesn't carry the film, but my goodness, does it help it exceed. I said I was probably not going to talk too much about the filming of it because I don't really care. I think it's a little toxic to be so elitist about how you're seeing the film. However, let's talk about the cinematography. Not the way it was shot, not the 65 millimeter film. It's obviously a Nolan film. It's a little eclectic in ways. It's tying together different timelines and phases of Oppenheimer's life. And it also uses, grayscale with very high contrast, or beautiful, like lush, vivid colors. It's a gorgeous film. It is truly beautiful to watch and be a part of. Watching the movie felt almost intimate with how beautiful it was. I'd say that with full emotion, understanding that, some people aren't going to care. It's gorgeous. It's part of what makes this movie great. It's probably what makes Nolan great. And I think it's also part of why he is so successful in these more unique works, and the way he can tie together timelines. It's not purposefully confusing like Inception or Tenet. This is just putting different phases of his life into one movie and one complete piece. Movie starts out immediately. Okay, you're thrust into the plot of the movie. And then throughout the movie, you're bouncing back and forth between the 20s and the 40s and the 50s and now the 30s. You're all over the place, but it's well scripted and well founded and constructed. And for that, you have to give Nolan credit. I would probably hop into cons at some point in this review, but I'm not going to lie to you, I have none. I don't think there are any. I think this is, without a doubt, a nomination for Best Movie of the Year. Truly is the best picture probably so far this year. And it doesn't look to have too much competition possibly for the rest of it. You have to really give Nolan a lot of credit taking a subject so large and important and being able to control it, being able to manage it successfully and make it into something that is digestible and enjoyable yet educational. It's so emotional. It's a beautifully crafted film. It's as if the other 11, 12 of his films have all come into making Oppenheimer. This movie can be a study on just truly how great Nolan has become at directing films. One thing I really do appreciate about this film, and this is where I talk about it maybe being a slight spoiler, so you can maybe skip over this if you want. But we don't see the bombs drop on Japan. And I think that's a really tough decision for anyone, especially as a director and especially in a work that is literally around the creation of the atomic bombs. But I think it's kind of important to not really show those. We have close to 200,000 people, I think, have died as a result of those. We don't need to glorify what it was. There's a great podcast that I do want to recommend to literally everyone watching this if you enjoyed the film. It's Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, and he has an episode called The Destroyer of Worlds, which is a famous quote from Oppenheimer, which I think he got from some book, I think about Vishnu, written in Sanskrit. It's talked about in the movie. Either way, Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, The Destroyer of Worlds. It's like a 6-hour podcast. Okay, I'm already going to go ahead and warn you. But it's possibly one of the greatest pieces of work I've ever consumed in my life. Ever. Book, movie, television, music, podcast, anything. It's one of the best pieces I've ever consumed. It really dives into and touches on not just the humanity behind the bomb, but the politics and the emotion and the thought processes and the psychology behind being the creator of something, and then also the owner of something that is the most dangerous thing ever created, and that is a weapon of mass destruction, an atomic bomb. Really, truly phenomenal. Little off subject for the for this. Obviously, it's not about that podcast, but you need to go watch or need to go listen to that podcast. Personally, I'm going to give it like a 9. I loved it. Really did. It's a phenomenal movie. Probably 9.5. Okay, it's not perfect. It's hard to be perfect. I think Interstellar was the perfect Nolan film, and I don't know that I'll ever be topped. But Oppenheimer is right behind it at number 2. It's a phenomenal watch that literally anyone, besides maybe kids, should see. Movie critically, it's a 10. It's movie of the year, at least so far through the 1st of August. There's nothing that I think even comes close. This movie is a masterclass in talent and dedication and hard work, and just showing the true the true skill of a craftsman like Christopher Nolan. Without a doubt, I recommend this to literally everyone except for kids. There's maybe some harsh language and a few nude scenes. The kids don't need to see this. Everyone else, it's 100% worth the watch, albeit it is 3 hours. So make sure you block off an afternoon.